G'day, hi, and welcome. 1985, a DeLorean was made with a Fox capacitor, which was a time machine to go back to the future. How do I know this? Because about 2 minutes ago, Michael J. Fox just said, you know what? Get ready for Q&A 85. Alright, so anyway, let's get into this. For those of you joining me for the first time, this is just me responding to questions and comments I get on various different videos, and other than just having a thumbs up or a yip as a response that I normally only have time to respond to, I like to give my audience a heartfelt response, and I never censor my comments, and I always encourage people to participate in the thing. That's one of the great things about YouTube, is that you can get interactive with it. Maybe you agree with me, maybe you disagree with me, but yeah, bring it on. Here we go. So let's just jump right into this. This one goes, there's no stopping this war path that we're on. The U.S. philosophy is that they weaken and kill all opponents. They can't threaten the U.S. power. The U.S. is trying to desperately dominate the whole world, and they will never stop, no matter how much death and destruction, misery and poverty that they create, only if they are stopped or fail. Bad for the world. They divide everybody along the lines on everyone's beliefs, prejudice, ethnicities, race, gender, religion, etc., and everybody is falling for it perfectly for their own demise. Question is, who are they? Good question, yeah, good question. The they question, yeah, who are they? I never met they, who are they? I don't know what more I can really add to that, but yeah, I know most of my viewers are American, and I know sometimes when people pick on your government, it sounds like you're anti their country or whatever. But I pick on all governments. I pick on my own and stuff like that. But it's just the thing with the United States is it's the dominant country that's at war with everybody. You know, maybe not everybody, but you get the idea. It's the one that has more wars under its belt than any other nation, right? In particular, more going on at this current time. And we know that all wars are bankers' wars. We also know that the United States is in real economic trouble, despite what the mainstream media says. Look, mainstream media comes out a couple of days, says, oh, look, the markets have crashed. Okay, but this is a great buying opportunity. So people probably bought a whole bunch of stuff, and guess what? It crashed again. They're trying to force people back into the market by making you believe it's a safe bet, but it's really not. Why? Because it's so manipulated. It's just a shambles, right? And basically, the U.S. foreign policy is designed, and guys like Paul Craig Roberts, pretty much agree with this, is that it's designed to create as much hatred for the United States as possible, so that they always have an enemy. So that's the thing, and also you have to factor in the Christian and Jewish Zionist lobby in the Congress, which basically, all wars for Israel, all wars are bankers' wars, and pretty much all the banks are owned by Zionists. There are differences between Jews and Zionists, but Zionists are typically a supremacy movement. The only difference is, unlike the KKK or the Black Panthers, is they don't have as much money behind their belt. But the Zionists, they pretty much own the banks, so that's why you're at war all the time. So debt and bombs, death and debt-based economy. So when I tell my American viewers is, don't get upset that I'm pointing this out to you. Get active. You need to really contact your law enforcement guys, and these are the guys that are going to save everybody. Why? Because they have to do the Iceland solution. You have to start throwing, and it's not just in your country, it's in all countries. They have to do this in Greece, they have to do this in Canada, they have to do this in UK, they have to do this everywhere. Whenever we have corrupt politicians, they must go to jail. Whenever these corrupt politicians are on behalf of corrupt corporations that are so-called too big to fail, I say too complicated to work, they must go to jail. Because if not, we see what happens when these madmen don't go to jail. We're seeing it all around the world. If you've been watching the migrant crisis going on in Europe, this is a branch of U.S. foreign policy. By overthrowing Muammar Gaddafi, okay, this has led to that. Now you can say, no, it doesn't. Well, yes, it does, because coalition forces, including Canadian Air Force, they went in there, they bombed Gaddafi's troops and everything like that. They disbanded the government like they did in Iraq, and now you have, like Gaddafi said, sectarian violence to the like that will make the Middle East completely on fire. And of course, by also trying to overthrow Assad in Syria, they've armed the Free Syrian Army, which in turn then started arming Al Qaeda, and then they changed the name to Al Nusra Front, and of course it just goes on. Then IS, ISIL, and Khorasan Front, all these jihadi groups come out of the woodwork. And of course, pretty much all of them are been trained by the U.S. In Jordan, there's 4,000 troops. Yes, al-Baghdadi, the leader of ISIS, or one of the leaders of ISIS, was trained by the CIA. This is openly admitted. Again, we keep arming these jihadi groups. Do you really think it's by accident? Incompetence, sure, you could say to a point, but when they keep doing the same, arming these jihadi groups over and over again, It's a pattern. It's the plan. And there's several CIA agents that have come out and said, no, we knew this was going to lead to this kind of thing, and the State Department didn't care. Now, mind you, these guys lost their jobs, but they're heroes for doing that because, again, if your paycheck and you think your retirement's not going to be there anyway. So if what are you really afraid of? Again, sure, you might take a hardship, but when you go down in the history books as the guy who got the Rockefeller and the Rothschild banking system brought to its knees and in jail, the George Soroses and the Hillary Clintons and the what you call them, all these tyrants of the world. If you're the one that brought them to justice, if you're a part of that, your name will be legendary, and I think that speaks volumes of bravery. Again, it only took 3% of the population to basically have the coup, or so the to overthrow a government, in 1776. But now we have tools that we don't even have to use violence to do this. Education is the key, and once you got education, then it's just a matter of getting the right prosecutors. Again, one charge: crimes against humanity. You've got enough people floating in the Mediterranean right now, and this is a branch of U.S. foreign policy. They are guilty of it. Even if you get them on negligence, it doesn't matter. It's mass genocide. But you can get these guys on arming the Free Syrian Army, which has led to more genocide and destabilization of a country, and therefore you can get these people on even terrorism charges. Yeah, I mean, Barack Obama down. Go back to George Bush. Get them all. Get Tony Blair over there. Get every country. It's us or them. It really is. And if we don't restore law, it's going to be a Mad Max world, and I don't want that. But anyway, thanks for that comment. Next one goes. Can I get an opinion on Tony Abbott and Australia? I feel as if the rest of the world is looking down on us at the moment because of the amount of stupid stuff Abbott does. Yeah, well, don't worry, because that's every politician in any time in history. It doesn't matter if it's left wing, right wing, whatever. Everybody always says, this is the worst government ever when they're in power. Why? Because typically all the governments equally suck. Tony Abbott and Prime Minister Harper here are pretty much buddies. They're very streamlined that way. Where the big problem for Australia, I don't know if Tony Abbott's is. Yeah, again, I'd rather have him than Barack Obama for sure. I don't think there'd be much difference. In fact, I'd probably rather have Stephen Harper than Tony Abbott. Tony Abbott's actually left of Stephen Harper, in my opinion, on a lot of issues. But don't kid yourself. Stephen Harper's pretty left-wing too, more socialist fascist. Australia, I don't know everything about the Australian economy and stuff like that, but I do know this, where the problem with Australia is the people who really run the show, and that's the Chinese. They pretty much bought your country. Don't worry, they're buying everybody's, but they really do. They really do have a lot of control over there, and maybe not the government, but when we're talking commerce, they're buying up the world because they can afford to do so. What does that tell you, right? What are they doing that we're not, right? So. But anyway, you get the idea. The biggest problem they have is the selling out. But this is globalization. That's what one world government looks like, is selling off sovereignty to the person who's going to drive the wages down the lowest for the cheapest stuff from the lowest bidder that eventually nobody can afford to buy, which is kind of ridiculous. But that's how Keynesians think. And if you don't know the difference between Austrian economics and Keynesian economics, go look at what it is, and then you can figure out what your politician does, not just in Australia, but anywhere. You figure out what they really stand for. Because almost every politician is the opposite of what they say they are. But anyway, there we go. Hopefully that helped a bit. Next one goes. Hello, Notregme. If you are ever out of a Q&A material, I have one for you. Which countries would you consider the safest to live in during the possible outbreak of the New World War? I am asking this out of personal interest and because I value your opinion and appreciate your style of narration. Kind regards. Well, thanks a lot there. That's a real tough one, okay? Because we've got to think about a few things. Where's safe, where's not safe. Now, you keep hearing how, South America's going to be safe. South America's going to be safe. I say no. Here's why. South America, when they're already in a rough spot, pretty much, any South American country's pretty much in poverty. There are no wealthy South American countries, people-wise. I mean, the people are, you've got winners and losers. For example, like a friend of mine years ago, Pablo, he grew up in like Central America and Honduras. And I remember he showed me pictures of it, like a villa he lived in. This place was just beautiful. It was like 50 by 50. It had that nice arched ceramic fence the whole way around, just just a complete postcard looking place, 500 acres or whatever they had. It was just ridiculous, right? And his dad was Canadian, his mom was Spanish, well, from Honduras, and he is a forester, so he used to spend a lot of time going through the jungle. He was kind of the best way to describe his job was like Indiana Jones. He was kind of like an explorer, but he did it on behalf of the Canadian government, and he just happened to raise a family down there. And when they came back up to here, and I remember Pavel was saying, I said, you showed me the pictures. I was like, wow, man. I said, that was like a beautiful place. I said, what's it like in there? He goes, well, he says, it's kind of, there's no middle class. He says, either you live in a huge villa or you live in a cardboard box. There's nothing in between. And that's what we're starting to see around the world, aren't we? So it's kind of an interesting thing. But what we also have to understand is that, yes, the winners and the losers, I mean, South America's cartels, communists, and dictators pretty much down there everywhere, right? And, it's kind of going around the world right now. It's like a cold or something. But the thing is that it may be safe for American people now and the tourists and stuff like that, but when the American economy collapses or a war breaks out, then the money won't be flowing to South America. People will get even more desperate. So you'll probably see Argentina collapse again, like 3 times in like 2 years or something like that. Just ridiculous. So that will make people become targets for kidnappers, etc. You already see it now. So it will get dangerous. I don't think South America, unless you're already of Spanish descent or whatever, can blend in really, really well. I don't know if that's the safest area to go. Now, what about Africa? Well, believe it or not, I think some places in Africa might not be too bad, depending, again, if you can fit in or not. I wouldn't go to South Africa if you were white, but maybe if you're off-white, you might be able to get along there. That type of thing. And I'm not being racist, I'm just being realistic. You have to look out where it is. I think island nations are probably going to be safer in the long run. For example, Iceland. If I know Canada's going to be at complete war over the Russians, and I know when Russia starts dropping nukes, I think Iceland might be a good option for me. Why? Because everybody forgets about Iceland, enough so that they didn't even notice that they threw their bankers and corrupt lawyers and politicians in jail, and kind of started fixing their economy. Another place would be basically island nations in the middle of the Pacific. To a point, you have to consider the trade routes, and you also have to consider where the Chinese military may end up. Remember, and again, we don't know the exact strategy what China is going to use, but we do know coastal defense is what they're mostly focused on, meaning missiles that they can plant on islands and take out warships. Because there's thousands of islands in the South Pacific for them to hide on. It's kind of like World War II, but with missiles. So some island nations might actually become targets in that sense. So it's really hard to say where to be. Anywhere in Europe, I think, is going to be a flop. Obviously you won't be able. This might sound really odd to you, but if you speak Russian during World War III, probably northern Russia, northeast Russia is probably going to be a safe place. Why? There's nothing there. There's no targets to hit. There's nothing. So that, strangely enough, might actually be kind of a safer place if you don't mind living in the bush. Canada, if we go more north, we're running right into the jaws of the Russian coastal defenses and stuff like that. Middle Canada, but Canada's so big, there's a lot of places here to hide, so that's good. And there's really relatively low density of population. I would avoid cities as much as possible. That's just my take on things. Middle East, well, good luck with that. But maybe Kazakhstan might be okay. Maybe, again, if you could fit in, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, I don't think those guys are going to get drawn into it. India, I'd probably stay away from India because they're kind of a bit of a monkey in the middle between China and Russia and Europe. So you never know what might be coming their way, plus with Iran. They're just too close to that region. So these might be places that you wouldn't consider, but who knows? China itself, I think I would stay, but maybe Nepal. Nepal might be okay. Depends again. Maybe Mongolia might be okay. Again, you get out some of those big tundra plains. There's just nothing there. So homesteader is definitely the way to go. You know what I mean? Other places that might be kind of safer. Again, possibly, I wouldn't say Papua New Guinea or Tasmania because of the very high crime rates there. You got to look at the crime rates too. You might not get involved in a war because those countries don't really have much to go to war with, but just also the safety aspect. Easter Island might be a nice place to spend if you could afford to live there. If they would let you stay long enough, probably wouldn't. There's a whole bunch of the Marshall Islands might be a possibility. The French Islands, the Canary Islands. It's hard to say. It depends what the strategy is. What you call it, Montserrat might not be a great place. Again, pretty poverty stricken. But maybe you might want to go to say like Turks and Caicos. Like Turks and Caicos. I mean, Bermuda. Bermuda might be okay. Those type of places if you could afford to live there. And of course, you also have to understand too. There's another little trick you could pull is if you're a guy that has enough money, to buy a big sailboat, you could probably live within island chains. Basically, your sailboat is actually a sovereign nation by naval law when you're out at sea. If boats over a certain size actually are basically island nations. They're basically considered sovereign territory. Unless they're docked. So there are catches. You have to catch up on maritime law, but it could allow you, if you have a passport, maybe you can stay within island chains. And there's enough island chains where, I mean, there's people that live in the Bahamas all year round on their boats. It's the way they live. But it'd have to be a pretty damn good boat that could weather a long storm. And speaking of storms, you have to take that, the cyclones and the tropical storms into consideration. So, safety is, I think, a relative state of mind. What's safe, what's not safe. Eastern Europe is just going to be, well, that's where they want the war. They want to, they want Russian Eastern Europeans to fight the war. They don't really want the mainland, or it's all kind of mainland, but they don't want main Europe, like the Western Europe, like Britain, France, Germany. They don't want to fight the war. They want like Lithuania, Poland, Ukraine, those places. They don't mind killing off those people fighting the Russians, right? That's the goal. But the Russians kind of know this. They're not stupid, right? So they're going to leapfrog over those guys or run right through them. And guess what's going to happen to them, right? And then they're going to go right into mainland Europe, and we're going to see, just like World War II, it'll be disaster. So there's really no place I could see there that would probably be safe to live, except for the people that might not be participating, such as maybe Greece. Greece, believe it or not, okay, if you can find a place to squat there, you might actually be okay there, in the sense of, as crazy as it is, yeah, there's no economy right now, but they're not going to be shooting at anybody. So, but then again, the Greeks might actually become extremely pro-Russian and allow more Russian bases to be open there, so that could be a problem too. So you got to factor that in. It's really a tough one. I know there's a lot of people banking on South America, but I just look at South America, and it's the highest crime rates in the world are like El Salvador, Bolivia, Honduras, all Central America. These are always in the top 10. Like almost all the top 10 most violent countries to live in are, and this is not even including countries at war. This is including countries at war. Honduras, you're looking at 6,000 to 8,000 people that get murdered every year. Per capita, that's a pretty high rate. There are only like 20 million there, so that's pretty high rate. Jamaica, you're looking at 1,100 people get murdered there every year on a population of 2.5 million or so. So again, you got to factor that in. You go to Greenland, maybe, but Greenland being so close to Russia, will it get pulled in World War III? It's hard to say. Switzerland, maybe, possibly, but it's right in the middle of it all. So even if they don't get into it, maybe the depending on which way the trade winds go, they might be sucking in some radioactive dust or whatever. But the other thing too about Greenland is Greenland and Iceland, again, almost virtually no crime rate whatsoever. But will they open the doors to you? That's the key. Give you an idea, Iceland, okay, 300,000 people. When U.S. bases started showing up there, the U.S. personnel were not allowed to go into the towns themselves. They always had to be escorted by, like an official from Iceland, because they were so worried about preserving their culture there. Strangely, it's funny, a nation that size has no problem trying to preserve its culture, but everybody else is just racist and bigot, right? That type of thing. Now, in Asia, again, where do you really go? Depends who you are. Again, if you're Asian, there might be Asian countries for you to go to. Pakistan, India, I don't know, but maybe Nepal might be, again, go hang out with the Buddhists, right? So you might be okay there. But China might flood in that way too, and you're squeezed between Russia and China. Who knows who's going to cooperate with who? That's a lot of landmass that's up for grab. That's not really extremely well defended. So it's a really tough one. I think safety is just, you got to fight where your feet are. I think that's the thing. And as far as in the United States of finding places to bug out to, the problem is, and you see this with a lot of preppers, they'll basically head to the hills, create a little cabin, they come back and the cabin's looted, and because there's like 100,000 guys doing the same thing they're doing, right? So where do you go? Well, the other place, and this might sound kind of odd, but the Arctic. Problem with the Arctic is supplying food and stuff like that. So you'd have to have a bug out plan up there. But the other problem with the Arctic is, again, the Russians are on the other side of the map from us, right? So the other thing is the South Arctic. Again, if you could tolerate the cold, you know, maybe, who knows? Again, I don't think there's any easy answer on that. I'm not trying to avoid an easy answer, but I just want to keep it realistic. I think you're best to stay as close to home as you can, and just avoid the major cities if you can, and just prepare for, because if they find you somewhere else, they're going to kill you there anyway. So it is what it is, right? But anyway, I guess I'll leave it at that. Thank you for that comment. Next one goes, and see how we're doing for time. Holy jeez, the time always flies so fast on these. You are absolutely right about preserving your race. I am Spanish of mixed race, but I believe that this world needs people of every race to stay pure. You shouldn't have to apologize for wanting to more pure white race children in would be a tragedy to lose a pure race of any kind. My problem is with whites who have so much hate that they want to do away with anyone else that is not white. Well, agreed. Very well said. And I mean, some people would even consider me white. I'm what you call Native Irish French. Well, at least that's what I identify as. Until I do a 23andMe, maybe I'm like, I don't know, Swahili. I don't know. Who knows? I could be anything, right? But yeah, like, again, here's something I'm going to throw at you just as an idea, okay? Here's what's allowed to exist, and here's what's not. The white race is not allowed to exist. It is completely taboo. You're a racist and bigot if you are. Okay? Now, here's the thing. You're allowed to identify as, if you're Caucasian, you're allowed to identify, and Caucasian is a very broad term. Not all Caucasians are white, just so you know. But Caucasians, or we'll just say the white Caucasians, okay, are allowed to identify, and so is everybody else in the world, as, say, a vampire. You're allowed to be a vampire. That's accepted reality that you can be a vampire. You can also have an accepted reality that you can be transgendered. Okay, so if you think you're the opposite sex of what you're born, that's accepted. That's reality because you believe that's what it is. There's nobody's allowed to question that. You're allowed to believe if you are, pretty much any other ethnicity other than white. But you're not allowed to be white. You can't say, well, I identify as white. No, you're not allowed to do that. You can identify as transgender. You can identify as a vampire, and the list goes on and on and on and on. But it makes it, like, even by their own standards of the cultural Marxists, like, it still doesn't work. It's. I digress. To me, I don't argue from the point of view of, and I agree with this statement here. No, I don't like white people that want to be supremacists. I don't like neo-Nazis. I don't like white supremacists. I don't like Jewish supremacists. I don't like La Raza supremacists. The race. There you go. I don't like the Black Panther supremacists. I don't like those type of people. Why? Because they're douchebags. I don't know if you can clinically or legally allowed to identify as douchebags, but if they could, I could identify them as douchebags. But I agree, yeah, like, it's not what we're going to gain by mixing. I mean, there are people out there, and this drives me nuts too. They say there's only one race, the human race, but then they go and say that the more races we mix with, the genetically more superior we might become because more racial diversity. But how can you say that, and then on the other hand say race doesn't exist? So either it does or it doesn't. You know what I mean? So it just blows my mind that the double speak that you get from the science community when they're supposed to be scientists, not political science. Like, it's not political. It is what it is, and there's nothing wrong with that. Is there much of a difference between? I believe every human on the planet is the same species. I don't believe we're different species, but I do believe we're different races. Like Neanderthals, they were a different species, but they were still, they were still humans. They were just a different species. The Denisovans, they were a different species, but they were still humans. Cro-Magnon man, early Cro-Magnon man wasn't us. Later Cro-Magnon man was. I mean, the Cro-Magnon DNA has not changed in 28,000 years. So I don't know. Maybe people need to take another look at that. But the Soviets between Asians and Caucasians, there's almost a 9%, 8 to 9% difference, depending on who they are. And again, with the genetic testing, okay, so you got 3 or 4% Neanderthal in Europeans, almost 0 Neanderthal in Africans. You've got 3 to 4% difference in of Denisovan DNA in Asians, but not in Europeans or Africans. So the question becomes then, okay, is there a difference? Yes, there's a difference. So that said, is it significant? Okay, that's the debate. But can we see differences in skull shapes? Yes. I mean, Aborigines don't have the same skull shapes as Africans. Africans and Caucasians and Asians have different skull shapes as well. Body size, brains are different, different sizes. Um, you know, our pineal gland in Caucasians is calcified. It's not in Africans. There are predispositions to different diseases between races. If you're South American, you're more likely to get diabetes. Doesn't mean you will get diabetes, but you have a gene that's more likely to get you that. Not so much in Caucasians and Africans. Africans, you're more likely to get colon cancer. In Caucasians, it's melanoma, skin cancer. Those type of things. Those type of things. And there are differences. There's a whole bunch of differences. But some people get so offended by that. I'm like, well, if you have your big boy pants on and you can actually handle a conversation like an adult, there's nothing about supremacy here at all. It's just, hey, there is difference. Where people get rubbed the wrong way is when you get the race realists. Now, yes, the science that they're putting out there, I believe, is correct. I mean, yes, the race and IQ thing, okay. But the problem is how they package it. They think it's an absolute, and it is clearly not. Yes, there might be a slight advantage for Asians when we're talking for learning things. Okay, they might have a slight advantage in IQ, but I think the fact that most Asians that do well study hard, that probably is going to trump any genetic advantage they're going to have. You know what I mean? So, and it's going to also, so you could see it that the environment is going to make more of a role there than the genetic advantage, but it is still there. The problem is with the race realists is that they just dwell on that. They're pretty much trying to be supremacist and tell them, well, the reason why we're different is because these people over here are stupid and these people are slightly smarter. And we can get along with them, but we can't get along with those over there. And I say, okay, come on, that's not fair. Is there a difference? Yes, let's acknowledge the difference, but to make it sound as if one's better than the other, no. Because again, if you take a professor from Harvard who might be really, really smart in his environment, grab him, drop him in the middle of the outback, the brilliant man is the Aborigine who knows how to survive there. So intelligence is defined by a lot of different things, right? So, but to me, I don't want to lose that. It's not what we gain by mixing with multiculturalism. Actually, multiculturalism, again, New World Order, doublespeak, it actually is monoculture because you're blending everything into one. You're actually creating the melting pot, whereas actual multicultural is exactly that. You leave people into their own groups. Now, that said, I'm not against anybody that, mixed dating, racial dating. Yes, a true bloodline is not really around anymore. There's no real such thing as a true bloodline. Sure, I get that. But there's also, for example, redheads. Now, yes, some people say it was a marketing scam a few years ago that redheads are so rare that they will go extinct in a few decades. But there's truth to it. Like they are kind of a rare people. I'm talking redheads, you know what I mean? But the thing is, a lot of people have a hard time to figure this out because so many people dye their hair. It's hard to tell who's natural, who's not, right? But you can pull it. Now, there's another problem here, is that, okay, once they're gone, then the next goes the blonde and the blue eyes and that type of thing. You get and then after that, it's the lighter skin, darker hair, say like, like Switzerland, where they're, kind of blondish, kind of brown haired. And then you go, say, maybe Aryans, such as, like, say, Syria, Iraq, Iran, in their areas where they're kind of white, but they got the dark beards and stuff like that, slightly getting olive look. Then you got your Indo-Europeans that are slightly olive and dark hair. Some of them still have blue eyes and green eyes and all that. And then their hair's starting to get really dark. And then you have your Pakistani Caucasians, which are really dark. They're almost blue, but they are actually Caucasians. And but they're different. They are different in like hair color, eye color, and stuff like that is only about, like, it's probably the smallest differences between the races, but it's the most noticeable, and that's what people get hung up on. But that's not what I'm arguing. I'm talking about the other things, the skull shapes, the all this. It's even our vocalizing is different. So there's a whole bunch of things that are different, but yet somehow it became offensive. I think that tells me more about the people that are offended by it, how racist they actually are because they're offended by it, than actually having the open discussion, because I'm fascinated by it. I think it's one of those things that the more we know about who we are, and there's so much we don't know. I mean, look, the Soviets, we only discovered them in 2010. I still go with the human hybrid theory that yes, environment may have had a lot to do with or something to do with the differences, but there was not enough time. 40,000 years is not enough time to go from sub-Saharan African to what we are now. I just you can't tell me white Europeans only showed up 8,000 years ago. Yes, that's what we know of, but it doesn't mean they weren't there before. And this is the whole 7 to 8,000 years ago. Because again, we could look at the Inuit up in the Arctic there. Yeah, some of them were placed there, but they were always there, and they haven't changed in 3,600 years. So you'd think if it only took 7,000 years for dark Africans to go, blue-eyed, blonde-haired Europeans, okay, you would think you would see this up in the Arctic as well, where you'd see, the Inuits slowly turn Caucasian, but they don't. Their diet is no different than people in Greenland of 3,600 years ago. If there was people in Greenland 3,600 years ago, they were chowing down on the same things: the fish, the whale, you get the idea. And there were people that go that far back, right? So we see that. Okay, well, why do people in Greenland look a little different? But they also have their Inuit there, and same with northern Russia. They have their Inuit there, or what they call their tribes. And same thing, they still look the same. They haven't changed. So they didn't go from 40,000 years ago from dark African to Inuit looking. Yes, maybe the diet has changed and made them a little more plump and a little shorter and stuff like that for the Arctic. I don't say that the environment has no bearing on it, but I don't think that's the absolute. I think they bred with something else, another humanoid that we haven't found yet. And what we're finding is that when we were walking around, we know of at least 5 other hominids that were walking around when we showed up. So that makes a lot more sense for the great, variations. Mutation, sure, that's a possibility. I mean, there's a lot of things that can be factored in, but to say that it was just a gradual, slowly evolved into this, or quickly evolved into this, I don't think so. I don't think so, Tim. There we go. But anyway, thanks for that comment. There we go. Next one goes, those 50 subs could take out 20 plus American ships easily and give China the help they need. You'll know if North Korea's leaders disappears. Kim Jong-un can never disappear. He is the best and most liked politician in history. He got 140% of the votes last time. Okay, just so you know. Yeah, those 50 subs. A lot of people are making fun of those North Korean subs because a lot of them are like not World War II era, but say early 1950s, right up to the Kilo subs. Which Kilo subs are one of the quietest Russian diesel electric subs on the planet, and they're also one of the most numerous subs. I don't know how many Kilos the North Koreans have, but they do have a couple of them. And these 50 subs, I guess they were probably just disbanded as or dispatched as, not disbanded, but dispatched as a precaution against South Korea, basically. But yeah, you're again, I don't see North Koreans submarine commanders going after, Ohio-class submarines. Well, they might, I mean, they might. I don't see them sinking that stuff. I don't see them going after U.S. warships. I see them going after the Shanghai Express, the big German freighter, the largest freighter, one of those 3 German freighters, the 3 largest freighters on the planet. I see them sinking something like that. Maybe not that one because it does business in China, but maybe something that's a U.S. supply ship. They might go after something like that. They might go after, again, the North Koreans have been known to sink, tour boats, stuff like that. But I could see them attacking like a harbor or attacking, sitting vessels, because again, the submarine they have, I mean, a torpedo is a torpedo. When it hits its target, there's almost a World War II era torpedo can sink a Nimitz class destroyer. Okay, or sorry, aircraft carrier. Okay, there's enough power in World War II's. It might not sink for a couple of days, but it would sink it. If it was a stern shot right on a Nimitz class aircraft carrier, if it could get the shot, that's enough power. I mean, you're talking 2,000 pounds of explosive there. I mean, that's pretty big, and guaranteed they're going to be having more powerful torpedoes than that. If they could get 2 or 3 torpedo hits on something like that, sure. Would they be able to? I think very unlikely, but it's not impossible, because here's what I would do if I were the U-boat commander of the day. Okay, we know they're going to detect our sub. Okay, we know that they're going to follow us. Okay. So we're going to do kind of a bit of a World War II tactic. It's called the Wolf Pack. What they do is they take their submarine and they fire up the diesels while they're underwater, so it clacks and clangs. They drop a few wrenches, make some noise, pretend to be sneaking around. They go around some submarines, They make sure they start pinging the sonar. They look like they're complete rookies, okay? Making as much noise as possible. So your Virginia class submarine starts laughing at these guys. They start following them around. They get right behind them, okay? Following in the wake. Okay, they probably, because they're going to use Soviet tactics, maybe every 2 minutes to every 2 hours, they're going to do a crazy eye. And they're going to go around undetected. Meanwhile, they probably know, okay, we know we're being followed by a U.S. sub. We know we're being followed by a warship. We know we're being followed by that. Let's lead them over here. Let's lead them over there. Let's see. Next thing you know, wham, out comes this torpedo, another torpedo, another torpedo. The sub's still up ahead of them, but there was 4 of them waiting up ahead with the doors open. The torpedo is ready to go, sitting there silent. Yeah, it's called a turkey shoot. That's what I would do. And you don't need a high-tech sub to do this. And it's been proven effective in World War II. If it's not making noise, again, they'll hear the other ship coming. Again, especially a Kylo class sub. It's advanced enough that they would probably hear, maybe not as far out, but I mean, most submarines can detect a wrench dropping in a submarine, 60, 100 miles away. Some submarines can hear stuff dropping, on the other side of the ocean almost. It's you don't know exactly what tactics they're going to use. I don't think it'd be likely, but I think what they would do is go for soft target kills, shipping, commercial boats, that type of thing. Yeah, so anyway, that's my take on it, so we'll have to wait and see, but I don't think they're going to make any attacks, because it seems, but if they were to make attacks, that's what it would be, in my opinion. I could be wrong. Next one goes, let's go see how I am for time. Man, the time flies on these things so fast. Next one goes, good video and thanks. Just wondering, but have you read the protocols of the learned elders of Zion? No, I have not. It's very easy to make a picture from one half of the puzzle, but are you open to the other explanations? Sure. What I am getting at is that most people think that Zionist is someone who is for the establishment of the state of Israel and terminations of all else. Indeed, it's a popular belief, and many hold on to it. The truth of the matter is, a Zionist is a satanic worker working for the Antichrist system. It is not pro-Israel, rather for the destruction of the Saganon of Satan, and Jesus speaks in Revelations. I know the popular belief that Jews run everything, all that. Yes, much of it is correct, but my theory is that they are descendants of Pharisees, which killed Christ. And what do you think? I'm interested. Well, me too. That's again. Look at the. Okay, we can go back to all these like secret orders and stuff like that. Look at the Knights Templar. They were warrior monks. Okay, they were trained to fight. Basically, they were not allowed to retreat unless they were outnumbered more than 3 to 1. These were badass. Warrior monks, right? Very good. They were fighting for the cause. All of a sudden, they find something in Solomon's temple, and then they just start becoming a bunch of hooligans. They start getting drunk, they start going to prostitution, extortion. Next thing you know, all these Knights Templars are getting rounded up, crucified, beheaded, killed, expelled, you name it. They're just, Rome just kind of did away with them all. Now, there is a thing of the hooked X. If you've ever heard the... you see it on this History Channel and stuff like that, an alternate history. But it does look like about 100 years before Columbus, that Knights Templars, actually in the 1300s, basically landed in the United States. And I know some people, like, once they get set in a history book, that's it. History can never change, and that's it. But it looks like in Utah, there's like caves where, basically Irish Celts have been there 1,000 years ago. So, I mean, this is the thing I love about archaeology and stuff like that. Again, there's almost no point in writing a history book anymore, because with the stuff we have now, we can discover things so quickly. And not so much so quickly, but it keeps rewriting itself. I think mankind has been around a hell of a lot longer than what we think. But anyway, with that said, the point I'm making is yeah, a lot of people ran and hid here, ran and hid there, to hide. Basically the Knights Templar. The theory is they came to the New World to basically preserve their religion, so they would be persecuted. Can you imagine that? Warrior monks, these guys with big ass swords, fleeing to America for the same reasons 100 years and several hundred years later other people would flee to America for the freedom of religion expression. So right away the islands stuck in the way of India, such as Canada and the United States, were already bastions of freedom in concept 100 years before Columbus. So that's pretty cool. Now, what does that have to do with Zion? Well, probably the same thing. Like, yes, there are several factions of Zionists too. Like anything, everything, there's no such thing as black or white. It's always a gray area. Everything is a zebra. It's always blended. There's always like, the more you dissect things, the more you notice. But the main Zionists are pretty easy to spot. We call them neocon, or they call them neocons down there in the United States, running Congress. And these guys are always talking about wars for Israel, how we have to protect Israel, and Israel, Henry Kissinger, George Soros, all these guys are Zionists. And many of them were Nazis in World War II. Well, not many of them, but a few of them were Nazis in World War II, but most noticeably George Soros was a Nazi collaborator, but he's also a huge Zionist. Now, whether they're Satanists, I don't know. It's hard to say, but Zionism, Nazism really do have a lot in common, depending on the Zionists. Some Zionists, again, take a slightly different dialogue of the interpretation of Zion. And then, of course, there's the Ashkenazi Jews that completely reject Zionists. So that's interesting, too. And I'd love to hear from these people. If you're going to defend Zionists, okay, give me your argument. We want to hear it. We do. Again, it might not be what I agree with. I'll debate you on it. I'm not a Jew, but again, I don't like supremacy groups. If you want to, I get people that always. And this is kind of funny too, because I always get people that are like, say, pro-Nazi or whatever, and they'll always state their position. And I don't always agree. You guys know I don't really care much for Nazis. But the thing is that because Nazis, again, Joseph Stalin, Hitler, to me they were both really, really, really horrible men. They got a lot of people killed. I don't see any innocence in. And here's what drives me nuts about Zionists, Nazis, and communists. Okay, you get people. Again, I seen a kid downtown walking around with those CCCP shirts and Che Guevara hat and all that. Sometimes it's like, if I know you're going to college because they're not teaching you this stuff. Simply due to the fact that if you knew what these monsters actually did in history, there's no way you could have a conscience while wearing something that has caused the death of so many people. But here's the rub. Here's the funny part. Or, well, it's not really funny, but like haha funny. But when we get like the Zionists, okay, they're completely hush-hush. They don't come out at all. But the Nazi guys, they're out there all the time. But they'll go, I'm against the New World Order. Okay, so the Zionist guy, you don't know if he's for a New World Order or not, or his World Order, or his or her World Order. So we know that the Zionists are kind of in the New World Order thing. But then you have the Nazi guy who's like, I'm against the New World Order. Well, what do you think the Nazis were? They were a New World Order. It's an empire. Empirism, empirism, empirism. I don't know how I can stress that enough. But that's exactly what they were. They were a new kind of Roman Empire. That's what the Nazis were. Well, why would Zionists be any different? So maybe they're Satanists. A lot of the stuff they seem to do could be sort of sacrificial. And again, with the death and destruction, it's hard to say how they view themselves. Maybe they do view themselves as making sacrifices. Again, look at how many religions in history, including Christianity, have done ritual sacrifice. Now we know about in Christianity where God told I think it was Abraham if I'm wrong, I'm sure somebody will correct me, but anyway, I think it was God told Abraham to sacrifice one of his sons, and he had him on the altar, and then he told him not to. Well, one of the things is God would never tell you to sacrifice your son, so maybe it was a demon just to see how far to push his faith, right? Well, maybe that's kind of the idea behind the Zionists, is that they're actually doing sacrifices, and bloodletting and stuff like that is to them, that's their thing. So that would be kind of like Satanism in a way, but it just Celts slaughtered cows, Hindus slaughter cows, maybe Zionists slaughter people. Who knows? Through manipulation. But it's hard to say. But I'm always interested to hear different takes on that too. But yeah, I see it as a supremacist movement. But the problem is, it's such a well-funded and well-organized supremacist movement that a lot of people are dying in most of these wars. Again, all wars are bankers' wars, or for Israel. So now, and there's also the debate of who are the Israelites. That one can go back. You could get blue in the face of who the true Israelites are. So anyway, and is the true Israel in Ethiopia? That's the other. The Ethiopians, the true Israelites, etc. Yeah. Anyway, I'll just stop it there because it can go on and on. But yeah, good question. Very good stuff. Next one goes. Just let this shit happen already, so the survivors can build a better society. Waiting and speculating is getting annoying. I want to believe nothing will happen W3 wise, and we might just learn our lesson and some point, and then some dumbass group or country does something stupid, and tensions rise again. I think that's, again, I agree with Einstein. He said he didn't know what weapons would be used in World War III, but he knew. He said World War IV will be definitely fought with sticks and stones. Yeah, I agree. Next one goes, and I guess I'm gonna have to wrap it up pretty soon. Stupid Americans. Right sector and the Azov are far right, not left wing. They fight for the same reasons: to rid Ukraine of Russians, and they also want to rid Ukraine of American influence. They take no funds from American or NATO. They fund themselves from Ukrainians, from others in Europe that support them. They fight to rid Ukraine of social weakness such as drugs, whoring, capitalism, and most Western values that degrade humanity. Maybe if you want to make a video on Ukraine, you should get educated. Okay, well, thanks for your comment there. I'm not American, so I'm Canadian. But the right sector, okay, I will agree with a lot of the stuff he's saying in here. As far as did they take money, well, again, you look at the protests that are going on in Ukraine again. Again, the people in the Maidan have never really left, but the right sector is not, and same with the Azov Battalion, all that. They are funding themselves, sure, to a point, but they've gotten a lot of money from like Soros and stuff like that. Soros has already admitted this, so nobody's hands are clean here. But that said, I do agree with you that they are trying to kill as many Russians as possible. In other words, they're going for total genocide in the eastern side. They hate them. I get it, it's bad blood. But I also would say too, they would be best if they could get rid of the United States, NATO, and all that stuff. But I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. But they were the useful idiots to overthrow the Yanukovych government. That's now, we can see that they might be doing it again to Poroshenko. And I think once that happens, then I think Europe pretty much says screw Ukraine and they're on their own. And then I think the United States might say, okay, well, we can't win the Ukraine, so we'll let the Russians have it. And at that point, Poland, you man your walls, because the amount of freaking refugees are going to fly into those places. Transnistria, they're going to run right past that, right into their country that Moldova. The amount of Ukrainians that are going to be flooding out of that country is going to be, why? Because there's going to be Russian tanks with Federation flags on them rolling in and nobody coming to meet them. At that point, we'll be reading about the Azov and the right sector guys in the history books. One last thing, no, they are left-wing. Why? They are nationalist fascist. That's on the left, that's not on the right. Every time I hear right sector, they're not right-wing. That again, it's the same with the politicians. They say they're one thing, but they do something else. If you're trying to have a totalitarian society by getting rid of capitalism, get rid of this, get rid of that, again, round up your whores, round up your drug addicts and stuff like that, puts them up against the wall and shoots them like the Nazis did. Okay, yeah, they did that. They did do that. Again, 11 million people died under Nazism. That's not a bastion of freedom. You know what I mean? Again, right sector. If you think Poroshenko's bad, just wait till the right sector's running the show, or the Azov. You're going to have swastikas flying above the Ukraine. The Ukraine is no longer going to be the Ukraine. It's going to be new Nazism. Who knows what it's going to turn into, but it's going to get bloody anyway. It already is. But anyway, I still appreciate the comment. But no, they are a left wing. They are not right wing. There's nothing about the control freaks of the left. When you're trying to control everything, you're on the left. You're not. The only thing that's right wing are like libertarians. Are conservatives can be right wing. They're right leaning. A little bit lesser. Restrictions and laws in business. Capitalists, okay, they're right wing. Okay. Anarcho-capitalism, they're right wing. Okay, and of course I said libertarian, and a Satanist is about as far right wing as you can get. Yeah, there we go. People just don't give a hoot about anything. But yeah, that's what it is. So left versus right. When you're talking nationalist fascist groups, they're on the left, and that's exactly what the right sector is. I don't know how they got coined as right-wing groups. It stuck from the communists. Basically, the whole term of capitalism came from was a communist term, which was referring to what used to be known as the free hand of the market. Or free market, whatever we call it. They call it capitalism. Capitalism isn't good or bad. Communism can be neither good or bad, but history's shown that communism hasn't really worked anywhere. successful. Well, it's worked successfully, just not in favor of humanity. That's all. Just anybody that disagrees with you puts them up against the wall and shoots them. So that's what the right sector's trying to do. So that's pretty left wing of a. Again, it's they want Nazi Germany again. Not all of them, sure, but again, it is what it is. You can very clearly see what their mandate is, and I agree with you. Yes, their goal is to keep fighting and kill every ethnic Russian in the country. So in other words, they're genocidal maniacs. So while they're trying to do that, every ethnic Russian in the Ukraine is going to be defending themselves. So again, it's insolvent, right? But anyway, great show. I'll leave it at that. If you like this kind of content, there'll be links down below. Please consider making a donation. It's just for the channel. Rate, and thank you very much to everybody who has. Rate, subscribe, share, comment, like, be true to yourself, be true to others, always do the right thing, and have yourselves a great day. G'day, hi, and welcome. 1985, a DeLorean was made with a Fox capacitor, which was a time machine to go back to the future. How do I know this? Because about 2 minutes ago, Michael J. Fox just said, you know what? Get ready for Q&A 85. All right, so anyway, let's get into this. For those of you joining me for the first time, this is just me responding to questions and comments I get on various different videos, and other than just having a thumbs up or a yip as a response that I normally only have time to respond to, I like to give my audience a heartfelt response, and I never censor my comments, and I always encourage people to participate in the thing. That's one of the great things about YouTube, is that you can get interactive with it. Maybe you agree with me, maybe you disagree with me, but yeah, bring it on. Here we go. So let's just jump right into this. This one goes, there's no stopping this war path that we're on. The U.S. philosophy is that they weaken and kill all opponents. They can't threaten the U.S. power. The U.S. is trying to desperately dominate the whole world, and they will never stop, no matter how much death and destruction, misery, and poverty that they create, only if they are stopped or fail. Bad for the world. They divide everybody along the lines on everyone's beliefs, prejudice, ethnicities, race, gender, religion, etc., and everybody is falling for it perfectly for their own demise. Question is, who are they? Good question, yeah, good question. The they question, yeah, who are they? I never met they, who are they? I don't know what more I can really add to that, but yeah, again, I know most of my viewers are American, and I know sometimes when people pick on your government, it sounds like you're anti their country or whatever. But I pick on all governments. I pick on my own and stuff like that. But it's just the thing with the United States is it's the dominant country that's at war with everybody. Maybe not everybody, but you get the idea. It's the one that has more wars under its belt than any other nation, right? In particular, more going on at this current time. And we know that all wars are bankers' wars. We also know that the United States is in real economic trouble, despite what the mainstream media says. Look, mainstream media comes out a couple of days, says, oh, look, the markets have crashed. Okay, but this is a great buying opportunity. So people probably bought a whole bunch of stuff, and guess what? It crashed again. They're trying to force people back into the market by making you believe it's a safe bet, but it's really not. Why? Because it's so manipulated. It's just a shambles, right? And basically, the U.S. foreign policy is designed, and guys like Paul Craig Roberts, pretty much agree with this, is that it's designed to create as much hatred for the United States as possible, so that they always have an enemy. So that's the thing. And also, you have to factor in the Christian and Jewish Zionist lobby in the Congress, which basically, all wars for Israel, all wars are bankers' wars, and pretty much all the banks are owned by Zionists. There are differences between Jews and Zionists, but Zionists are typically a supremacy movement. The only difference is, unlike the KKK or the Black Panthers, is they don't have as much money behind their belt. But the Zionists, they pretty much own the banks, so that's why you're at war all the time. So debt and bombs, death and debt-based economy. So when I tell my American viewers is, don't get upset that I'm pointing this out to you. Get active. You need to really contact your law enforcement guys, and these are the guys that are going to save everybody. Why? Because they have to do the Iceland solution. You have to start throwing, and it's not just in your country, it's in all countries. They have to do this in Greece, they have to do this in Canada, they have to do this in UK, they have to do this everywhere. Whenever we have corrupt politicians, they must go to jail. Whenever these corrupt politicians are on behalf of corrupt corporations that are so-called too big to fail, I say too complicated to work, they must go to jail. Because if not, we see what happens when these madmen don't go to jail. We're seeing it all around the world. If you've been watching the migrant crisis going on in Europe, this is a branch of U.S. foreign policy. By overthrowing Muammar Gaddafi, okay, this has led to that. Now you can say, no, it doesn't. Well, yes, it does, because coalition forces, including Canadian Air Force, they went in there, they bombed Gaddafi's troops and everything like that. They disbanded the government like they did in Iraq, and now you have, like Gaddafi said, sectarian violence to the like that will make the Middle East completely on fire. And of course, by also trying to overthrow Assad in Syria, they've armed the Free Syrian Army, which in turn then started arming Al Qaeda, and then they changed the name to Al Nusra Front, and of course it just goes on. And IS, ISIL, and Khorasan Front, all these jihadi groups come out of the woodwork, and of course pretty much all of them are been trained by the U.S. In Jordan, there's 4,000 troops. Yes, al-Baghdadi, the leader of ISIS, or one of the leaders of ISIS, was trained by the CIA. This is openly admitted. Again, we keep arming these jihadi groups. Do you really think it's by accident? Incompetence, sure, you could say to a point, but when they keep doing the same, arming these jihadi groups over and over again, it's a pattern. It's the plan. There's several CIA agents that have come out and said, no, we knew this was going to lead to this kind of thing, and the State Department didn't care. Now, mind you, these guys lost their jobs, but they're heroes for doing that because, again, if your paycheck and you think your retirement's not going to be there anyway. So, what are you really afraid of? Again, sure, you might take a hardship, but when you go down in the history books as the guy who got the Rockefeller and the Rothschild banking system brought to its knees and in jail, the George Soroses and the Hillary Clintons and the all these tyrants of the world, if you're the one that brought them to justice, if you're a part of that, your name will be legendary, and I think that speaks volumes of bravery. Again, it only took 3% of the population to basically have the coup, to overthrow a government, in 1776. But now we have tools that we don't even have to use violence to do this. Education is the key. And once you got education, then it's just a matter of getting the right prosecutors. Again, one charge, crimes against humanity. You've got enough people floating in the Mediterranean right now, and this is a branch of U.S. foreign policy. They are guilty of it. Even if you get them on negligence, it doesn't matter. It's mass genocide. But you can get these guys on arming the Free Syrian Army, which has led to more genocide and destabilization of a country, and therefore you can get these people on even terrorism charges. Yeah, I mean, Barack Obama down. Go back to George Bush. Get them all. Get Tony Blair over there. Get every country. It's us or them. It really is. And if if we don't restore law, it's going to be a Mad Max world, and I don't want that. But anyway, thanks for that comment. Next one goes, can I get an opinion on Tony Abbott and Australia? I feel as if the rest of the world is looking down on us at the moment because of the amount of stupid stuff Abbott does. Well, don't worry, because that's every politician in any time in history. It doesn't matter if it's left wing, right wing, whatever. Everybody always says, this is the worst government ever when they're in power. Why? Because typically all the governments equally suck. Tony Abbott and Prime Minister Harper here are pretty much buddies. They're very streamlined that way. Where the big problem for Australia, I don't know if Tony Abbott's is. Yeah, again, I'd rather have him than Barack Obama for sure. I don't think there'd be